Welcome to The Ripple, where extraordinary women executives share their turning points, growing pains, breakthroughs, and triumphs to help you show up with confidence. I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, and today we're joined by the wise Samantha McKenna, founder and CEO of Sam Sales. She's a former executive sales leader at LinkedIn, a top 100 global sales leader, and top 25 women in revenue. She joins us to share a moment that inspired her mission. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks. Congrats on your launch of your podcast. Very exciting news.
We're so excited to have this new way to tell the stories of women leaders like you. I know that we featured you in the past, and now we get to bring you back and tell your story in a whole new way. I would love to hear a little bit about what excites you about the work that you're doing now.
Oh my gosh. At our company, we live and breathe to just make positive impact. So thinking about every sales tactic that kind of makes you go, ugh, is the complete opposite of what we teach. So we're thinking about how do we make positive impact? How do we make sure that people know how to sell in this environment? How do we know that we can make impact so that they can feel like they're selling in an authentic way? This is everything for us, right? Because I think so many people think sales and they get nervous. They think, oh my gosh, I have to cold call. I have to be somebody I'm not. I have to put on this persona when I negotiate. And we're like, you don't have to do any of that. You can be exactly who you are. You can focus on manners-driven sales. You can focus on high quality instead of quantity. You can do all of that while being super, super successful because I've done exactly that. Come over here and we'll show you how. That's what's so exciting to me. I feel like we can change this profession for the good and really teach people how to succeed and on their own terms.
I think that's wonderful. And it's so needed because there are about a million myths about selling, right? I'm certainly not an expert, but the way that I've always had it explained to me was about, giving someone pain medicine if they have a headache, right? And you're not trying to convince them that they have a headache. You're just trying to help them with the tools that you have. And I think it's great that you focus on helping people keep that close at heart
Yeah.
and remind them that sales is about helping and not convincing.
I think for so many people who struggle with this profession or struggle, perhaps they've accepted the job and then they don't quite know what to do. I think it's such a light, shining moment for them when we say you should show up to these calls to solve, not to sell. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? And if you just think about that as the end goal, exactly to your point, right? You're here for a reason. You've come to our call for a reason. You've inbounded for a reason. Now we have to figure out why. Why was spending time with us worth it for you today? And when you show up to solve the challenges that they have, the questions that you ask just naturally change because you're not trying to sell your solution. You're trying to say, what's your issue? And how long have you had that? And why is it important that you solve it now? You ask those questions, which, lo and behold, naturally help you sell anyway. I love that about our profession, that we can truly benefit people and solve the challenges that are keeping them up at night.
I'm really curious hearing you talk about this. What is the mission behind this work? Like, what brought you to this place? How do you hope to change the world with it?
I think I got into sales just like everybody else. But there's a great quote from Corporate Bro, which I won't quote exactly, but if you don't follow him, do it. And hopefully he'll entertain you. But he says something along the lines of somewhere along the way, you leaped up and you fell into sales. So that's exactly what happened. I moved to Washington, D.C., couldn't find a job. It was a tough market in 2008. And got into sales a little reticently. But I think what's so cool, the magic of this is, again, just how I think the profession has not a great reputation. And I think people are so enamored when they find a salesperson that just sells differently, that shows up to solve, that cares about their challenges, that looks to connect them, that goes above and beyond, that's urgent. I think that is what I'm so passionate about at the end of the day. What I love too, and I think I'm not usually a touting my accolades person, but when I talk about the millions of dollars that I've made in sales and the records that I've broken, I say that to say, and I did it not doing any of those things that people say you have to do. I never made a single cold call in my life. I've never double cold called somebody, good grief. I've never, put extreme pressure on someone or not responded to them when they've said no. What I love about this and what inspires me about this profession is that you can absolutely kill it financially and just, again, do it in a way that's authentic to you and being exactly who you are.
I love that. I love that you're bringing authenticity to sales and making people feel like they can be themselves. Can you tell me about a particular moment that inspired your mission with all of this?
Yeah, I think it was one of the first times that I'd ever heard that the things that I taught, this was, gosh, maybe 10 years ago, was the things that I taught, one, were something that no one had ever thought of. But they saw that this basically changed the entire way they sold. Just thinking about some of the practices we have, like, and this is what we hear now. That is what inspires us today, is that every single day, without exaggeration, we get notes either to our inbox, to our Sam Sales, contact us forms, to our LinkedIn DMs that say, you changed my career, like you changed my life, or I thought this was so silly, or show me you know me. It seemed like so much effort for so little reward. And then I tried it and it worked. And then I tried it again and it worked 3 more times. Oh my gosh. And so it's when we get that feedback, when we hear we've changed people's lives, I don't really know what else you could ask for from a profession. And the fact that we get to do this on our terms, our way, and build a company our way, there's nothing better to it. In fact, today we just announced Summer Fridays starting next Friday. And while that might be such an ordinary thing, it adds to the already extensive office closures we have throughout the year and brings us to 36 days throughout the year that we're closed as a team on top of our unlimited PTO. You can build a company your way, you can be really successful your way, and still, make impact.
I love that. It seems like such a hard thing to do as a small team to make space for all of that
Mhm.
and to find success in less time, with less access to your team.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, and we actually just talked about this too with our maternity leave policy, our parental, we're an all women team, so I'll say maternity leave, but technically our parental leave policy. But we extended one for 3 months. So anybody that has a little kiddo has a 3 month policy with us. And I think one thing that's interesting is we got a lot of like, I can't believe that a business your size is doing that because so few businesses do it. But I think that there's really something to if you treat your employees right, right? If you really think about their lives, their work life balance, the things that they need, I think you'll find that not only do they still get all of their work done within the confines of that time, but they'll probably do more than you expected anyway because they're so grateful to work for a company that just gives a darn about them. And then on top of that, right, you think about the loyalty that that breeds. You think about the enthusiasm that breeds for the company that they work for. Our teams, travel all over the world. They're always wearing their Sam Sales gear. And they're like, we're so excited. Their parents bleed Sam Sales orange because they talk about how passionate they are to work for us. So then their parents get excited. So what does that mean for our tenure? What does that mean for our culture? What does that mean for our lack of attrition and having to backfill a seat? Who knew that doing right by our buyers and doing right by our clients could have so much impact if you go against the odds of what's the norm in corporate America and in sales?
I think this is messaging we've been getting from so many sources over the last handful of years, but it feels like such a leap of faith for leaders and business owners to actually act on it because
Yeah.
we've come from decades of human resources, right? And seeing our people as resources that we need to squeeze the most out of in order to do well by our business
Mhm.
and feeling like the interests of our workers and the interests of our business are actually at odds with each other, but
Yeah.
what you're describing is that one really enables the other. And I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this because to me, there's such a connection between having a human centered business where people can be their whole selves. They can be parents. They can be humans who need to leave the office, who want more flexibility, who want work life balance. They can be their whole selves, and they can also work for a company where they're selling authentically and teaching people to sell authentically.
I think we have two main first things going for us is one, that we don't have any shareholders to respond to and report to. And then two, we don't have anybody that's invested in our business to report to. People ask us that all the time if we want to raise capital. And I basically say over my dead body. And I think the thing you have to think about is as a seller and as an entrepreneur and as a CEO, I'm extremely driven in a competitive way. And I'm extremely driven by money, as many of us are that are in this profession to an extent. And I say that to an extent, and I think about this that let's say I pushed our team a little bit harder, and let's say I didn't have as much PTO, or let's say I tried to squeeze every, ounce out of them I possibly could. maybe we would bring in another $500,000 or another $1 million. And I think, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have that lack of balance that we have now? And I think to me, payment in terms of how we build our business isn't just in the form of the finances that we have, but I think on top of that, it's how we make people feel. It's the lives we give the people who are on our team. I don't think we have a lot of people who think that same way. I'd rather have that one less or that less $500,000 as a business and know that the 14, 15, 16 people that work on our team are so damn happy and would never want to leave because no one's ever going to give them what we've given them here. That's what matters to me. And I think at the end of the day, like if I think about my legacy, it's going to be that. Like we're always going to do tremendously well financially. Another $1 million, another $500,000 isn't going to move the needle to nth degree, given how far we've already come. So why not instead just gas clutch a little bit, for lack of a better word, right? And let's make a little bit less, but have a little bit more fun while we're at it, and have these people say like, I was part of that. Sam really impacted my life. Like that's payment enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly a point of diminishing returns on money buying happiness, right? Sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to create more happiness. It's wonderful to see the through line between in your business, you care about how you make people feel and not just pushing them to make you more money. And what you're teaching people is also to sell, not to pressure, not to convince, but to help people and to make them feel good by feeling like they are seen and understood and that someone is supporting them rather than pushing them.
Totally. And I think that even bleeds through like with the time that we get, right? We give up to 3 hours of pro bono time every single week, especially just directly for myself. But on top of that, we think about the charities that we can support, right? So we're definitely a bleeding heart liberals on our side here, but we support things like the Trevor Project, Justice Project. We think Innocence Project, rather. Think about things like Alzheimer's. Like it's such a small amount of money that we can raise, but if we can give some of our time to put on events or raise money or give our time away in exchange for people making charitable donations, what can we do to make a broader impact, not just to our profession, but to our communities? As an organization, we've raised over, I think we're at about $124,000 that we've raised collectively over just a few years of doing this. And is $124,000 going to solve, a particular type of cancer or disease? Absolutely not. But when you think about the collective impact that we can all make together as a community, as a nation, there's so much that we can do there. So it's really about feeling like we're also doing something that makes broader impact outside of just the goals that we have here.
We've been talking about mission and the idea of mission. I think that everybody feels called to make a positive impact in the world. So
Yeah.
being able to do that through your work is a really fulfilling and exciting thing.
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, what more could you really ask for? And to be surrounded by people who feel the same way, that really want to stretch themselves for the benefit of others. I mean, you really surround yourself with people who have equally large and continuing to stretch, if that's a word, hearts, which it's amazing to be a part of.
How did you know that, you're getting all this feedback now that what you're doing is changing people's careers and lives? You're able to contribute to all of these great causes. How did you know that this was the right path for you? How did you know that you need to be the voice bringing more authenticity into sales?
The tactics that I've used to succeed, right? As I used those in corporate America, I always got that feedback. So even when it was in a smaller scale, that it wasn't so broad on LinkedIn or didn't have, tens of thousands of followers, it was always the same piece of feedback. And I think it was also not only from my peers, but my boss's boss, and so on and so forth, which always made me say, well, why are you in that seat? And why am I in this one? If you think my ideas are great, let's swap roles. But I think in terms of using my voice, I've also always been very loud, extroverted, gregarious, enthusiastic. And I found sometimes I would say something and people were like, oh, this really inspired me, or you should, speak on a bigger stage or whatever. And I was like, well, all right. And I wasn't too nervous to do that. So I was like, well, I'm just going to start, using my voice to see if I can make impact. It was more just saying like, I wonder who else I can help. Right. And that's actually exactly how I started posting on LinkedIn. I think that was about 2011 or 12. And I said, well, these tactics worked for my tiny little company in Richmond, Virginia. I wonder if they'll work for other people. I mean, I think I can still tell you the day that I got 10 likes on a post and lost my mind. and thought that like I've really made it. And that was it. Lo and behold, right? They're do a little bit better than that these days. But it's just, I think that I've never been shy to use my voice. And when I got all this positive feedback, I was like, well, maybe I'll just share it a little bit more broadly.
It's a powerful thing to do, especially because we see comparatively so many women leaders who shy away from that spotlight and
Yeah.
see using their voice as a liability instead of an asset. So, props to you for doing that and stepping into the spotlight because you're a role model to everybody else. You're showing them an example of what can happen when you do lean into your mission and what you believe and what you've learned. I'm curious what advice you might have for other founders and executives. Why do you think it's so important for them to be driven by mission in their work?
I think if you're not driven by a mission, if you're only driven by the things, the tangible outcomes or revenue or, another KPI or something like that. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't know how much sustainable satisfaction is going to come from that. So when you think about the broader impact you can make, whatever that is, right? Perhaps it's changing the way people think about a particular product or a particular, thing that relates to AI or whatever it may be. Like, what is it you're trying to change? What's your legacy at the end of the day? Because your legacy isn't going to be she always hit her KPIs. Your legacy is going to be something around a broader mission. So I would say to think about that for entrepreneurs, right? Like, as you've thought about what it takes to be financially successful, think about what it is that you can do to make impact somewhere else. What is it? What are the values and principles of your company? What do you exist for? I think it's something also that drew me to LinkedIn when you think about that mission, right? When you think about their mission statement, it's to create economic opportunity for every person on the planet. I think a little bit of a variant of that. But just even hearing that, creating economic opportunity makes my heart like swell. Right? It's so wonderful. You're building something that is going to help another human. And so turn to your own, principles, turn to your own characteristics of who you are and think, what do you want to draw upon and how do you want to tie that to the mission of the organization? We're a sales training company, right? At the end of the day, if you say that, right, or we create brands for executives on LinkedIn, great. That might sound really boring. And you might also say, well, everybody does that. So what makes you different? What makes us different is we really give a darn about everybody around us and how we can impact them positively. So how does our work do that? How does what we coach people on to do that? Somebody actually just wrote us the other day and said they work at a company that's currently doing a spiff and they're paying $1,000 per meeting that this BDR books. And he said, I got turned on to Show Me You Know Me. I have been cleaning up with meetings. I want you to know like the massive financial impact you're having in my life. Holy cannoli. It's not about impacting the revenue for that company. It's about impacting the revenue for that person and giving them the keys to succeed, to find joy. And then what are all the things that success impacts in the rest of their life? What a privilege for us to be a part of that.
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that story. It's been wonderful hearing from you today.
Thanks. Thanks for letting me passionately yell about this stuff for a few minutes. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me on.
Before we end the episode, we want to take a moment to reflect with you, our thoughtful listeners, about what Samantha's story means to you. How can you be more authentically yourself in your work? And how can you contribute to making work a more human-centric place? If today's show inspired you, tell us. Send an email or voice memo to hello@wednesdaywomen.org. Or keep the ripple going by giving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your ratings help us grow and inspire even more people. This podcast is brought to you by Wednesday Women, an organization dedicated to increasing the visibility of women executive leaders. Learn more at wednesdaywomen.org. Thank you to our executive producers, Melissa Moody and Leslie Greenwood. Again, I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, hoping you'll keep the ripple going. Until next time.